My brother spent 8 years isolating me. He announced at Disney World he'd cut my road access. I said nothing and called an attorney before the plane landed. Nick announced it at the theme park welcome dinner like he was reading a quarterly report. The county recorded the easement vacation 6 weeks ago, he said, cutting into his steak while my nieces chased each other around the table. You can't access the back 40 anymore. Only ingress is through my parcel. I didn't throw my fork. I didn't raise my voice. I picked up my water glass and drank from it slowly, and while I swallowed I made the only decision that mattered. I was done. Quick pause. If you're the type of person who reads these at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping, you're my people. Subscribe and like so we can keep feeding this addiction together. Okay, back to the story. 3 months later, a state audit of Nick's registered investment advisory firm would trigger criminal fraud charges on 4 counts. I did not file the audit request. I did not have to. Let me back up. My name is Doug. I am 41 years old. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, the younger of 2 brothers, and for as long as I can remember my function in my family was to be the one who held things together when Nick needed something absorbed. Nick is 3 years older, credentialed as a financial advisor, and has the particular gift of making his self-interest sound like generosity. He handles my mother's retirement accounts. He handled the estate paperwork when our father died in 2016. He is the son who calls on Sundays and remembers birthdays and shows up to school plays. He is also the person who, I now understand, spent 8 years systematically dismantling every attempt I made to build a life that did not orbit him. I want to be precise about the pattern because precision is what finally saved me. In 2015, I was offered a project manager role with a construction firm. Good salary, company truck, relocation package. I had already told my then-girlfriend that we were going. 2 weeks before I was supposed to sign the offer letter, my mother called me crying. Nick had told her that her investment portfolio had taken a significant hit, market volatility, he said, and that she needed my help sorting through the paperwork because Nick was too close to it emotionally. I drove to Raleigh. I stayed for 3 weeks. When I finally looked at the portfolio myself, it was fine. Down a few %, same as everything else that quarter. Nothing that required my physical presence in Raleigh for 3 weeks. I lost that job. My girlfriend, who had already started mentally packing, stopped mentally packing and then eventually left. In 2018, I had a standing job offer from a commercial real estate firm. I had a lease signed on an apartment there. I had driven down twice to look at neighborhoods. The week I was supposed to give notice at my Raleigh job, Nick called to tell me that my mother had been showing signs and that he thought someone needed to be closer to home. I asked what signs. He was vague. I asked if she had seen a doctor. He said, not yet, but soon. I cancelled. My mother, when I moved back into her spare room for 6 months to keep an eye on things, was sharp as she had ever been. She beat me at Scrabble 4 times in a row. There were no signs. In 2021, I met a woman. We dated for 11 months. Things were serious. She had a daughter, 8 years old, quiet kid who liked drawing. I was thinking about what the next step looked like when Nick told me, casually, at a family cookout, that he'd had to make some adjustments to the land trust our father had left us. He said it in the way he said everything, smoothly, helpfully, like he was doing paperwork on my behalf. I asked what adjustments. He said it was administrative cleanup. Nothing that affects you materially, Doug. You know how Dad's filing was. I didn't push. I should have. The woman and I eventually fell apart over my chronic unavailability, my constant state of low-grade emergency, my inability to fully leave Raleigh. I didn't connect the dots then. I just thought I was someone who couldn't hold a relationship. I had spent 8 years genuinely believing I was the unstable variable in my own life. Not Nick. Me. I believed I was the one who couldn't commit, couldn't relocate, couldn't let my mother be independent, couldn't trust that things would hold if I stepped away. Nick never said those words directly. He didn't have to. He would say things like, I just know you feel responsible, Doug, because that's who you are, and, my mother worries about you when you're far away, not me, you know how she is, and then the one I heard most, you know how these things go. Family first, everything else follows. That last phrase. He said it so often it stopped sounding like manipulation and started sounding like weather. It was the way things were. The land is 40 acres, left equally to me and Nick when our father died. It is not dramatic land. It is mostly pine and red clay, a creek running through the back third, a gravel road along the eastern edge where our father used to park his truck and sit and not say much. Nick owns the adjacent parcel, which our father sold him at a steep family discount in 2013. For years, the boundary between our parcels was irrelevant. The access easement along the eastern road crossed the corner of Nick's parcel and gave me the only practical route to the back 40. Every surveyor, every county map, every title document for the past 30 years showed that easement is active. Nick had it vacated quietly. He used his position as a registered agent for a county land trust, the same administrative infrastructure he had set up ostensibly to manage our father's estate, to petition the county to vacate the easement on the grounds that it was unused and abandoned. He timed the recording to happen while I was traveling for work in February. He told no one in the family. And then he waited 4 months and announced it at the theme park welcome dinner on a Tuesday night in June, with my mother sitting 3 chairs down and my nieces doing laps around the table and a castle visible through the restaurant window. You can't access the back 40 anymore, he said. Only ingress is through my parcel. He paused, fork down. You know how these things go, Doug. Family first, everything else follows. If you want to sell your portion, I'll give you fair market. We can have papers drawn up before we fly back. I nodded. My jaw was tight. I drank my water. I went to the hotel bathroom at 9:15 that night and called Matt. Matt is my supervisor at the commercial development firm where I have worked for 6 years. He is also the person who, 18 months earlier, had quietly handed me a card for a land use attorney and said, I don't know what's going on with your family property situation, but the way you describe the paperwork doesn't sound right. Matt had said it without drama, without pressure. He had left the card on my desk and walked back to his office. I had kept the card. I am a person who keeps things. I told Matt what Nick had said. Matt was quiet for about 4 seconds. Okay, he said. Don't sign anything. Don't respond to him in writing yet. I'm going to text you a number. Call it tomorrow morning before 9. The number was for the land use attorney. But Matt had also, apparently, made a second call that night, to a forensic accountant he knew from a previous development dispute, a thorough and unhurried man I will call by his role only, who specialized in examining the financial records of registered investment advisors. I did not know Matt had made that second call. Not yet. I flew back to Raleigh on Thursday. On Friday I met with the land use attorney. I brought everything I had, the original easement documents from our father's estate, the county maps, the title records, and, this is the part that mattered, a folder I had kept since 2021, when Nick had mentioned administrative adjustments to the land trust at that cookout and I had, purely out of habit, sent myself an email that night summarizing what he had said word for word. I keep records. I always have. It is not a revenge instinct. It is how I am. The attorney looked at the easement vacation filing and went very still. This was filed through the county land trust, she said. Nick is the registered agent, I said. Does he have authority to act unilaterally on trust property? I told her I didn't know. She told me to find out. I went home that night and pulled every document from our father's estate that I had copies of, which was most of them because our father had been meticulous and I had inherited that. My hand was steady going through the folders. My stomach was not. What I found, reading slowly, was that the land trust our father had established designated both brothers as co-trustees, with a provision requiring mutual written consent for any change to the trust's real property or access rights. Nick had not obtained my written consent. Nick had forged the co-trustee signature line on the vacation petition. I sat with that for a long time before I called the attorney back. I did not call Nick. The next part happened slowly, the way real consequences always do. The attorney filed a petition to reinstate the easement and simultaneously filed a complaint with the county register flagging the forged document. That referral triggered a title fraud review. I will not pretend I understood every step of what followed. What I understood was that I had handed the machine a legitimate grievance and the machine was now running. I moved, during this period, into a rental. I had already been looking. The job in the south, the job out west, the woman with the quiet daughter, I could finally see what I had been circling for 8 years. I was not the unstable variable. I had been managed. And the managing only worked as long as I believed I needed to stay close. I blocked Nick's number. I blocked the family group chat. I told my mother, in one clear phone call, that I loved her and I would call her on her schedule, not on Nick's, and that she should not tell me what Nick was doing or saying about any of this. She was quiet. Then she said, "Okay, baby." That was enough. I started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I noticed it like a physical thing, the way you noticed the absence of a sound that had been running so long you stopped hearing it. Matt called me 6 weeks after the theme park. The forensic accountant finished the preliminary review, he said. I asked what review. There was a pause. I made a call when you called me from the theme park, Matt said. I hope that's all right. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to get your hopes up if it was nothing. It was not nothing. Nick's registered investment advisory firm had been managing accounts for 11 clients beyond my mother. The forensic accountant had flagged irregular fee structures, undisclosed conflicts of interest on 3 land transactions, and what appeared to be a systematic pattern of billing for advisory services on accounts where Nick held co-trustee status, including, specifically, my mother's retirement accounts. The fees were not enormous in any single instance. Across 11 accounts over 7 years, they added up to just over $340,000 in charges that could not be reconciled with documented services. The forensic accountant had filed a referral to the State Attorney General's Investment Oversight Division. That referral triggered a state audit of Nick's firm. I did not file the audit request. I want to be clear about that. I did nothing except hand the land use attorney a legitimate legal complaint and answer every question the auditors subsequently sent me honestly. Then came the office manager. The office manager was Nick's right hand. I had met them twice at family events over the years, quiet person, careful, always seemed slightly uncomfortable in Nick's orbit. I did not know what they knew until the attorney called me on a Thursday afternoon and said, "Your brother's office manager contacted the division investigator voluntarily. They brought documentation." Apparently the office manager had been keeping records too. Spreadsheets, copies of billing statements, a log of client instructions that had been overridden or ignored. They had been keeping them for 3 years in a folder on a personal hard drive, not sure what to do with them, not sure if what they were seeing was actually what they thought it was. When the state audit investigators contacted them as part of the standard staff interview process, the office manager handed them the hard drive. The office manager had also kept, among other things, an email thread from 2021 in which Nick had asked them to process a land trust amendment and they had flagged that the co-trustee signature didn't match the signature on file. Nick had replied, "It's fine. You know how these things go. Family first, everything else follows." The phrase appeared in Nick's own email in his own words applied to a document I now knew was forged. I held the phone tighter than I needed to. The state audit concluded 4.5 months after it was triggered. The Investment Oversight Division referred the matter to the State Attorney General's office. Nick was charged with 4 counts, securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, forgery of a public document, and elder financial exploitation, the last count specifically relating to the fee irregularities on my mother's accounts over 7 years. His investment advisor license was suspended pending the criminal proceedings. His firm's operating license was revoked. His attorney called my attorney. Then Nick called my cell phone, which no longer accepted his calls. Then he drove to Raleigh and sat in my mother's living room and called me from her phone. I answered because I saw her name on the screen. "Doug." His voice was flat. Not angry. It was emptied out. "I need you to talk to the investigators. Tell them about the context. Tell them how the family finances worked. You know this isn't what they're making it look like." I was quiet for a moment. "Nick," I said, "do you remember what you told me at the theme park? That night at dinner?" He didn't answer. "You said, you know how these things go. Family first, everything else follows." I kept my voice even. "I'm going to let the process do what it does. That's me putting family first." He started to say something. I talked over him, gently. "I'm not angry at you. I need you to understand that. I'm not calling witnesses. I'm not talking to reporters. I'm not doing anything. I answered every question the investigators asked me truthfully, and that's all I did. Everything that's happening now is the result of what you built. I didn't build it." Long silence. "You could have just sold me the land," he said. "No," I said. "I couldn't. That's what you never understood. I was never going to sell you the land. Not because of the money. Because it was Dad's. And you knew that, and you tried anyway." I heard my mother's voice in the background, soft, asking Nick something. He covered the phone and answered her. Then he came back. "My mother wants to know if you're coming for Thanksgiving." "Tell her I'll call her this weekend," I said. "Directly. It will be her and me." I hung up. About a week later, my mother called me herself, on a Sunday morning. We talked for an hour and 15 minutes. She told me she had asked a different advisor to review her accounts, a woman at a firm downtown, no family connection, and that she was handling things. She did not mention Nick except once, briefly, to say she was very sad and very tired. I told her that was a reasonable way to feel. She told me she was glad I was sleeping better. I had not told her I was sleeping better. Mothers know. The criminal case is still in process as I write this. Nick's plea negotiations have been ongoing for 2 months. His attorney and the Attorney General's office are working through the restitution figures. My land use attorney got the easement reinstated by court order in October, 6 weeks after the fraud referral went up the chain. The forgery finding made the vacation petition void on its face. The back 40 is accessible again. I drove out there on a Saturday in November, parked where my father used to park, sat on the hood of my truck and watched the creek for about 40 minutes. I live in a new city now. The job at Matt's firm moved into a senior role in September. He had been holding the conversation for the right moment, and the right moment turned out to be when I finally stopped being a person who canceled things at the last minute because of manufactured emergencies. I have a good apartment. I have a routine. I have been on 2 dates, nothing serious, and I did not feel the particular low-grade dread I used to feel whenever something good started, the waiting for the phone to ring with a new crisis, the waiting for the floor to drop. What I understand now, that I could not see from inside it, is that I was load-bearing. Nick had built his entire operation, his finances, his confidence, his sense of control, on the assumption that I would always be reachable, always be available, always be the one who absorbed the impact so he didn't have to. The job in the South, the job out West, the woman, the back 40, all of it was about keeping me in range. Not because he needed me personally. Because he needed the utility of me. The emotional version of an easement. Free access across my life whenever he required it. The moment I stepped off the path, there was nothing underneath him. I didn't plan the collapse. I didn't engineer it. I just stopped being available for it. Some people, when I've described any of this, say that I got lucky, that the office manager came forward, that Matt knew the accountant, that the documents existed. Maybe. But the office manager kept those records for 3 years because something in them knew the situation was wrong, and they kept them anyway. Matt made that second call because he had watched me for 6 years and recognized a person being used. The documents existed because I am someone who saves things, not for revenge, but because I was raised by a man who believed that a clear record is a form of dignity. Nick told me for 8 years, you know how these things go. Family first, everything else follows. He was right about one thing. When you finally put yourself first, everything else does follow.